The Data Chief is a podcast for data and analytics leaders to share their personal stories and insights on technology, culture, and leadership. Welcome to The Data Chief.
Welcome to The Data Chief. I'm your host, Cindy Housen. Today, we're joined by Dr. Vanja Josefovsky, the CEO and founder of Kumo.AI. Also, the former CTO of both Airbnb and Pinterest. He's here to unpack the biggest shifts he's seen in the technical vision for data and AI, and how to build data-forward organizations. Vanja, welcome to The Data Chief.
Yeah, amazing to be here, Cindy. Thanks for having me today. It's going to be a fun conversation.
The Data Chief is brought to you by ThoughtSpot, the agentic analytics platform company that is redefining how the world interacts with data. With ThoughtSpot's intuitive natural language search and agentic AI, every user can access transparent, governed, AI-powered insights when and where they need them. Learn why industry leaders like Cisco, Toyota, Hyatt, and Capital One rely on ThoughtSpot. Experience the new era of analytics at ThoughtSpot.com.
Yeah, and where in the world is here today, Vanja?
We're in the Kumo's worldwide headquarters in Mountain View, California.
Okay, probably just down the street from ThoughtSpot. We're on Castro Street. Which street are you on?
We're on 357 Castro.
Okay, so now we're going to compare favorite eating and stomping grounds there. I can already see it. But Vanja, you have such a fascinating background and building some iconic companies and data science teams at brands that everyone loves, like Pinterest and Airbnb. Tell us a little bit about your career journey and how did you come to be so core at data and AI?
Yeah, look, I think we professionally live at one of the most amazing times around. The last 25 years or so that I've been around this valley has been amazing. What a progress we've made in many different ways in dealing with data and capturing data, and I think truly changed the world. And it seems like it's just the beginning. I started, thinking that I'm going to be a professor. So I was teaching, in Sweden after my PhD for a year, but came to stay at IBM here for a year. I stayed 6 years, and then from there on, I went to Yahoo, being mostly in databases and enterprise search. Database was the first software really big business here in the Valley, right? So, and from there on, I started working on AI about 20 years back, against the best advice of a very well-known professor at the time, who told me that almost everything that's in data mining, it's already invented. And, dived into it. And for the last 20 years, I, went through multiple iterations of technologies and nomenclature about those technologies, machine learning, data mining. Then we are back to AI now.
Yeah.
A really amazing journey.
So good thing you didn't listen to that professor. Are you still in touch with him or her?
And I haven't seen him in 20 years, but yeah, he told me that, look, maybe this is not a good time because almost all algorithms are already there. So there's very little that's going to happen on the top, right? This just tells you, even people, even for us that are deep into this industry, sometimes it's really hard to make predictions about the future.
It is. And it's good. Neither of us listened to our professors because mine told me the internet would never be mainstream or a real thing because dial-up was too slow. Who knows? But we are collecting more and more data, but are we making the best use of it? Or are we at an inflection point now? What do you think?
I think, maybe there's two levels of thinking here about data. It's the worldwide, how much data we collect as humanity, right, has exploded as well. And also as enterprises. And I think that big data collection started somehow with relational databases to capture the enterprise data, and then the internet on the consumer side. And I think both fueled this renaissance. The internet data is what we use to train these large models these days. And then on the enterprise side, it's just an explosion of data that we have collected, enable us to build a lot better usage. I think on both levels, there is so much more so much more value we can extract out of the data. And look, the internet data allow us to build artificial reasoning today. And because that's what the large language models are trained on, I think there is a lot more we can do on the top. There's nature, physics data, all the streams and cameras and observation of the world. And also on the enterprise side, I think we are just scratching the surface of, how we use data and how much value we can get out of it. So I would say still in infancy in how to get value out of data.
Yeah, I often say, well, at least as it relates to generative AI, that we're really in the dial-up era of the internet for generative AI. There's still so much to do. But you also use an interesting term, a data-forward organization. What does that mean to you?
I mean, to some extent, I think for the enterprises today, even, but also, surely for the enterprises of the future, the key asset is the data that you have, that you know about your customers. And somehow, you need to build the whole enterprise around this data that's here. So it's almost like building the whole organization. It's not an afterthought. It's not something that helps people run the organization. It's at the center of the organization and how it functions.
So let me challenge you there. It's at the center of the organizations. And I would say it was at the center of Yahoo. It's at the center of Airbnb. Do you think it's at the center of, let's say, traditional organizations, large banks, large pharmaceutical companies, or is that still a work in progress?
I think it's still a work in progress. I do think the banks, of the future, the pharmaceutical companies of the future will be built like that.
Yes.
And this is what is going to make the differentiation.
Yeah. And so this is a difference between, say, large, fast-moving tech companies where you have spent a lot of time versus others that are maybe not digital natives. With the rise of AI native applications, how do you see the shift from, let's say, traditional report-centric to now proactive agentic intelligence playing out?
Yeah, and we have seen this play out before. We saw the cloud kind of migration, and how that made winners and losers, right? Those that transition and manage those companies went ahead. I think and the whole reason for us having cloud is to store and process data, right? And so when we collect data today, we basically have two ways of getting value out of it. One way is through analytics. When you build analytics, you provide some kind of a summary of the data, some kind of a way for users to intuitively understand what's in there. And then a human will process that and make a decision. Right? Sometimes I browse the internet and I, out of curiosity, look at different statistics about world production of iron and so on. But that's curiosity, That's browsing behavior. In enterprise, you usually look backwards at data so that you can make decisions forward. That's the sole reason. The second way of using data is to actually do predictive AI, where you build models that kind of predict the future. Those predictions can be used by humans, but also can be plugged directly into systems that influence consumers. So I think with AI going forward, AI will do two things. First, it might do the analysis part on top of analytics and bring conclusions. But also I think AI more and more is going to be forward oriented. That means that look at the data and then make decisions based on data, both at macro and micro level in the company, being at the level of individual customer or being a level of strategic how the company is going to go. And I think more and more of those decisions at every level will be done automatically.
Yeah.
It's not going to happen overnight, but that's where we're going.
So let's pull on some threads here related to predictive and choose one of your favorite examples. So you've worked in ad placements, for example, at both companies. Will somebody click on that ad? Or what is the likelihood a customer will churn? This is something that I would say traditional machine learning, it's proven, but it's always training the models on past data. And the impact is clear. The hard business benefits are clear. Did you retain that customer, or did that ad perform well? How do you think that shapes what we're trying to do with agentic AI now?
So I think if you look at how we get that type of value of data, it's enormously complex. It takes a very long time. And I think this shapes how data is used. You have to hire expensive people that will spend months to get you back a prediction what Cindy will buy or if Cindy is going to churn, right? And that kind of shapes how enterprises use the data, because they have to first hire the people, then let them work for a long time, then, get the fruits out of it. I think, we're at the cusp of changing that completely. And that relates to the work we're doing at Kumo. Imagine you can ask any question to the data, anything you want, and you can get instantaneous prediction based on all of your enterprise data and the whole world knowledge without having to predict which kind of questions you're going to ask. That's kind of that GPT-3 moment, when you have something that can answer everything. And I think we're on a cusp of that today. And this is going to enable much simpler agentic flows on the top, because you don't have to anticipate anything. You just ask a question and you get back a prediction. I'm very excited about this. I think it's going to be a significant change in how we use enterprise data, maybe the biggest one in the last 2 or 3 decades.
Yeah. And one of the things that organizations struggle with, or maybe also a difference between traditional machine learning and general analytics and generative AI, traditional machine learning, it's easier to measure the lift, the impact of the model. How have you approached the teams that you've led, their ability to measure and articulate the business impact?
Yeah, that's a very good question. And I think different companies do this in a very different way. I think, we as technical scientists, maybe, we want to always build stuff that's measurable. And I think the only predictable way to advance in any company is to build things, measure them, iterate and improve. That's what's, has shown it works. It's, many companies in this valley. This is what has driven success for many companies. And I think that's going to be the majority of how we're going to continue working. We're going to measure, we're going to see how things work. However, not everything is measurable in this world.
Correct. And that's the challenge. And even to be able to do this, your data better be accessible and at least clean enough. And how do you even measure that?
I think good leaders sometimes have to make decisions based on intuition, because sometimes, measuring things and is just going to take too much time. In that case, you do all the analytics, all the analysis you need, and you make a call. And that's where those two fit together, I think.
Yeah. So how do you advise teams and organizations you've worked with to ensure that their AI initiatives are aligned with the company's strategic goals?
Yeah, that's a very hard question. And, it's a very difficult one. It's very difficult to find people that understand both sides of the coin, right? And I think, as I said, getting predictions, getting, decisions out of data takes so much investment. And again, as technologists, we sometimes like to build things and we have, those subtleties in the business objective. They're so important, but we're restrained of trying many things because, defining the exact growth metric for a company, like we were at Pinterest, we refined it year after year, that exact, number that's going to drive the company for the year. But we changed it all the time. And that was because as the business were evolving, we were realizing there are better ways to do this. Now, resetting the company to measure and then to predict those things would take months, if not a year. And that's why it's really important to work close with the business to get that connection very quickly. It's one of the challenges as executive, as a CTO or as a head of data, that's maybe one of the key roles to play in the company, to do the translation between, the non-technical peers to the technical team down and making sure that works. I don't think there is a universal mechanism here to do this, but I think it's the most important part of that job.
Yeah, for sure. Now, you mentioned Kumo.AI, your most recent startup, and you're pioneering relational foundation models. Tell us a little bit about that.
So at Kumo, we have brought the advances of AI to the enterprise data. If we look at the large language models that are trained out there, they're trained on images, they're trained on video, on text, on audio, but relational enterprise data is largely left behind. So we have adapted the transformer architectures to work directly on a raw relational data in the data warehouse. With this, we have allowed to get predictions without having to do feature engineering or training set generation. And that eliminates about 95% of the work in the machine learning flow and getting superior results because we learn over the entirety of the data. Computer vision and text went through the similar journey maybe 15, 20 years back. And then, in addition to that, using this platform, this training platform, we've amassed a large number of public data sets and then modified them with even orders of magnitude more synthetic data. And we've pre-trained a single model that can now be used for all predictive tasks in the enterprise without having to train a task-specific model. And that's where the magic is. It's like, how can you train on a lot of data, one model, and now we come to our enterprise and say, hey, this model can predict fraud as well. It can predict recommendations as well. It can predict churn. It can predict everything. And from everything we have tested, it has a very broad applicability space.
Thank you. So it's the difference of it's generative AI for predictions based on structured data. Is that right?
Yeah, we don't generate per se artifacts, we generate predictions, but I would say it's using transformer architectures and it's using pre-training as a concept, which is used was used for all of the large language models to be able to answer the enterprise-centric questions here.
Right, right. And how has the combination of data science and machine learning and then generative AI at the same time, how has that shaped the work on this?
I think that it has, everything when you read the papers or, the websites today, everything looks like a great breakthrough, but everything is kind of related and science is always incremental, right? So I think everything we've learned in the last 20 years and, how to use vectors and embeddings and then how to pack more and more information in there and then increase, the potential of those by new network architectures, that all kind of rolls in here. That's the reason, I decided not to stay and be a professor because I felt science is moving kind of slow.
You think science is moving slow, and yet most of us are struggling to keep up. Well, maybe it's also, do you think this is also because the cloud compute has enabled the training of these larger models, enabled some of the agility to actually do this?
Absolutely. And I think to some extent, this is a triumph of a science, but it's also a triumph of engineering because a lot of the benefits come from just being able to scale. It was unheard from us to be able to process this type of models even a few years back. So it's a lot of engineering here that has made all of this possible, including what we're doing at Kumo, because the scales of these models is nothing we could even imagine only a few years back.
Yeah. So the cloud is an important component. What does that mean for organizations that still have a lot of data in on-premises data stores? Tech debt is a real thing. We don't get to just throw away architectures of the past overnight. Some talk about, well, cloud also has unpredictable cost. So some are repatriating their data back to on-premises. What are your thoughts here?
I think if you optimize for short-term costs, and if that's really important for the growth of your business, then maybe going on-prem is a smart thing to do. However, if you think that the data is going to play a significant role in the growth of your company going forward, then putting the data on-prem will cut you out of the majority of the technologies, at least for a year or two until they're adapted. I know that we don't deploy on-prem, for example. It's just too big of a hassle for us.
Yeah.
So if you really value your data, you need to stay in the cloud. That's clear to me. If your data has no value to you, then you can do whatever you want. And if the cost is the major thing that's going to drive your enterprise, then also you can do whatever you want. But it's like we used to build everything in-house. Like when we were at Yahoo, we built everything in-house, right? Nobody does that today. This is the new enterprise. It's like somebody else is going to solve this problem better. And therefore, you have to keep the data in the cloud. Now, about the cloud cost, I would say, cloud is built to be easy to consume. It's built by the cloud providers that it's much easier. And I think there's still no great framework for keeping cloud costs down. And it's something that we all struggle with. And, that's where you have to be detailed. You have to look at things and make sure things are not running. There's technology for that, but I don't think it's a solved problem yet.
Yeah. Or there's still substantial room for improvement. Query tagging, throttling, turning certain users off, setting limits for certain users who Cindy wrote an outer join and shouldn't have done that, things like that. But part of this is also then when you think about the way analytics has been done, you've talked about going from batch analytics to real-time predictions. How does that play out? Or what's the technical components that need to be in place before you can do that?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think if we look at where we're going with that, we'll be able to get instantaneous prediction from all data. Imagine, and that's our vision in Kumo, to be that, that system that spans the globe and drives the decision-making of every enterprise on Earth with any question instantaneously, based on all available data, private and public. Okay, so that's where we're going. And at that point, I would say that, we have achieved the mission to extract the value from the data.
Okay.
So obviously, we have some ways to go toward that. And I think to get there, it's not going to be an evolution of what's currently in production. We have to invent something new, something better, something much easier than what we've been doing for the last 15 years, specifically for tabular relational data. Because look, we're doing the same thing. We're doing, getting data in multiple tables, join it together, then make some features based on what our intuition is, then train models, see if it works, then, iterate on that. That's just way too difficult. It's maybe what analytics was 15, 20 years back. We wrote Hadoop jobs, right? To calculate things, right? And then every number that we need to produce, we need to write another job. So it takes, a few months to making sure that this runs, and then we have 5 jobs running. So then one of them stops running because the other one are choking the machines, right? And look how far we've come today and, what kind of things we can do in analytics. Then we're going to see the same inflection with predictive AI.
Yeah. So as a startup founder, how do you prioritize what you build, what your team builds, versus when you leverage ecosystem components?
So startup is do or die, right? It's very different than larger companies. I don't want to build anything that I don't have to. That's the golden rule. It's like, if I can get it from somewhere else, if it works, I'll use it today, right? Obviously, with all security and everything else needs to be on top. But I feel that the smaller the companies are, the more, are inclined to use things from outside. And I think that's just going to accelerate even in the higher tiers, so, in the bigger companies, because it's very difficult to build things in-house that will match somebody who is focused on it. I mean, again, this happened on analytics as well, right? So people, we were building our own analytics platform with open source and 2 to 5 person teams. Nobody in sane mind would do this today, right? The same thing happened with the infrastructure, right? We were running our own data centers for different companies. Nobody in sane mind would do today. So I think more and more of That envelope is moving further up. And I think companies' ability to make decisions to use third parties and integrate them quicker will, in many ways, define losers from winners.
So it's who integrates the fastest, not just who builds the fastest.
Who integrates the fastest, who has processes to be able to get vendors in. Because look, this is the way that cloud operates today. Is not the end of this evolution. And as you know now, the data warehousing companies are building whole app ecosystems on the top. And if that succeeds, which I believe it will, that means we will have again this kind of a transition moment, like when we went from on-prem to cloud. Now it's going to be from cloud, which is more of a utility compute where you're tied to one cloud provider. You move your compute to where your data is. And with that, you can use any cloud with a simple config file. And so that transition is so significant that I think that's going to be another extinction moment for companies that are not able to transition. That's happening now.
So it's more compute at the edge.
So it's more closer to the data. It's different abstractions, which makes it easier to manage. And it's going to be maybe much easier to build applications and deploy them and so on than having to buy repackaged open source from cloud providers and then build it all yourself on the top.
For sure. I think this is why we've also seen an explosion of AI and ML startups. So if you think about from your perspective, both as a builder in this space and an innovator in this space, if you take the last 15 years, what is the single most impactful emerging trend that you're seeing right now in AI and data and infrastructure that CTOs and chief data and analytics officers should be paying attention to?
Yeah, I mean, as I said, I think this moving the application building from just simple compute storage, open source kind of paradigm to higher level where, you're going to be provided all this thing inside your data warehouse, I think is going to make, if you look at your applications that are running today, and if you can think a way to do them better at 10x less cost, then you should rewrite them. I think, including myself, when I was in executive roles, I think the fear of rebuilding things is always there because there's cost. And, as a CTO, you always have to convince the CFO that it's worthwhile. But, people tend to overstay with their current implementations, and that sets them behind on a critical moment.
Yeah, well, I think they overstay for a combination of reasons. Some is like, if it doesn't give you more value or run more efficiently, don't rebuild what's not broken.
Yeah.
And then there's also the pride of ownership or fear of, well, something was hard coded into something and it's going to get messed up in the new environment.
Yeah, and in a lot of cases, technical organization map the technology itself. So changing, the technical stack requires changing the organization.
Yeah, that's hard.
And that's very hard.
That is hard. Well, Vanja, we've covered a lot of ground. Let's switch to a fun lightning round. If you had to design an AI-powered app just for fun, what crazy idea would you bring to life?
An AI-powered app? I would probably like to have one that's going to manage my teenage kids.
Manage their schedules or make sure they're keeping up with their homework?
Yeah, all of the above. I'm thinking in the enterprise, look, I'm really curious. I'm seeing people building these apps today. And to some extent, I think some of these apps might be a disappointment from everything we expect. But boy, it's going to be so much better in a couple of years from everything we're seeing. So I'm very excited to see all these agentic apps coming in and start doing things that are, really taking so much time today.
There's a lot of creativity, that's for sure. So beyond tech, what's an interesting hobby or interest of yours that might surprise people?
I mean, I guess, whenever you join Kumo, we always do a fun fact. I took that from Airbnb. Airbnb, we were all very big in fun facts. I think a fun fact about me is that my key workout is rollerblading. I've done this for the last 30 years. I like to rollerblade. I do that 4 or 5 times a week. Yeah, that's my main sport. So I enjoy that outdoors. Yeah.
So now I'm wondering, are you going to run me over on Castro Street? Or I think you live in the hilly part of California, a bit south there. So are you flat or hills?
I usually don't do that around Castro, so don't worry.
Okay. And if you were handed a plane ticket right now, where's your dream spur of the moment destination?
You know what? I would say that I would like to be at work now. There's so much happening. If I would go anywhere, I would really not feel that well. I think, I do travel a couple times a year, go back to Eastern Europe and see my parents. My dream is to go to Bali when I retire and stay for a couple months. But yeah, every time I think of that, I'm sitting on the beach and my laptop is open. So I'll need to change something.
There you go. Yeah, change the screen display or something so it doesn't work on the beach. I don't know. All right. And then you can choose the last question. Either what are you grateful for, maybe beyond the obvious, or if someone had to ask you, what is the happiest memory you have from the past week?
The happiest memory is we closed the quarter and it went pretty well, I would say.
Okay, congratulations.
Thanks so much. It's a lot of work to do that.
Yes, I know. Being a pioneer can be painful, as a friend said to me, but it's also joyful when things go to plan or beyond plan. So, Vanja, thank you so much for sharing your insights on the Data Chief.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Really fun talking to you.
Likewise. Thank you for joining the Data Chief as we explore data and AI leadership. To continue your journey, subscribe to our podcast on your preferred listening platform and connect with me on LinkedIn or X at BI Scorecard. If you are loving this podcast, please rate or review it so others can also discover the podcast.
The Data Chief is brought to you by ThoughtSpot, the agentic analytics platform company built for everyone to create personalized insights, drive decisions, and take action. Learn how companies like Lyft, Brambles, and Navan are leading the way at ThoughtSpot.com.